Microservices are an integral part of the modern software architecture. They provide an enhanced scalability, flexibility, and resilience. However, they come with certain challenges, such as complication in the development and management process. So let's start by talking about some of the common problems that are faced in the microservice landscape. The number one, lack of unified observability. Thanks to Anthony, I think by now we all have understood what is observability. So I will not jump to that, but yeah. We often struggle with a lack of unified observability across microservices that leads to complicated debugging and performance monitoring, as well as overall health assessment. Number second, redundant tasks. So developers often spend excessive time setting up services that share similar functionalities. This redundancy not only leads to the wastage of time, but it also leads to the inconsistencies in configurations and potential errors. My third point is separate implementations. When teams create their own implementations for common functionalities such as authentication, logging, it often leads to increased maintenance burdens. And obviously, when it comes to onboarding new developers, it becomes a quite challenging task because the new developer needs to be familiarized with the current approach. So this all brings us to Gopher, our solution to all these problems. Gopher is an opinionated framework that is designed to simplify the microservice architecture or simplify the building of microservices in Golang. So by standardizing the practices and by we try to alleviate the pain that is commonly related in the microservice landscape. We have integrated all the essential features that you need to actually just ready to make production grade applications. And for telling you why you want to learn a new framework, why adopt a new one when there are already frameworks like Gen, Echo, etc., I would like to welcome ARYAN, who will let you know about the key features and advantages of Gopher.
Thank you, UMANG. So, hi everyone. So when we talk about other frameworks, right, you need to manage a lot of things when you are working with them. You need to manage the body, you need to manage the headers, you need to manage the status codes and all of those things. But when it comes to Gopher, right, we do it automatically for you so that you just need to focus on the business logic. You don't need to worry about what will be the status code, what will be the headers and all of that because we will do it for you. So it is a purely simple example where you just write the code and you return the error and you return the message. If there is no error, your product will be processed and the syntax around everyone will be same throughout. Coming to the next point, out of the box observability. The simple code which I showed you before, it has the observability completely. So you don't need to worry about anything at that point of time because Gopher provides you complete observability like logs, metrics, and traces with the basic lines of code, while no other framework is doing that. Coming to the third point, simplified handler for async communication. We need to create a lot of Kafka-driven applications, event-driven applications where you need to handle a lot of data. And with that data, you need to manage a lot of things. You need to commit the messages. You need to make sure that all of the data which you are processing the connection is stable and all of those things. But when you're talking about Gopher, right, you don't need to worry about all of those things. You just need to take the message, you need to process, and you just return that. If there is no error, it will automatically gets committed, and you can move forward. You don't need to worry about the connection. You don't need to worry about other things. So we understand that a microservice or any application, right, it needs a lot of database support. So Gopher supports a lot of different databases along with data migration. Even if you're working with different team members, you don't need to worry about all of this because Gopher will make sure the complete code is same throughout. The database schema is same throughout. We manage the complete database operations. So with the transactions as well. So if a migration fails in production, it fails throughout. You don't need, the application stops at that point of time. Graceful shutdown and panic recovery. So these are two of the major features. So if your application shut down, it makes sure that no data is lost. If a connection is ongoing, it will make sure that the connection is already closed, the data is already sent, and then only the new pods will come in. Even for the panic recovery thing, your application will never panic. It will not stop abruptly. It will rather recover from any point of time whenever it panics. And the final and foremost, we support HTTP as well as gRPC. And the complete observability is built in completely. Even HTTP, gRPC, all of that supports observability. So your complete application will be visible throughout. So coming to the observability part, Gopher exports traces, metrics, and logs by default. So you don't need to worry about anything because Gopher is already exporting all the metrics to the port 2121. You don't need to adding your own matrices so that to monitor how your application is performing because Gopher is already providing that. Even for the other external databases which we support, we have our custom packages which you can use to have the functionality. You can set up your Prometheus and Grafana to view it. We just exports it to the metrics port. So the data which we showed, all of these come by default. You don't need to set up it manually. We say the response time SLA, request latency, response code overtime, and more other SQL related, Redis related, all other Grafana metrics are also present. Coming to the trace. So Gopher exports all the traces throughout the microservice. Even if you are having like tens of different microservices built on Gopher, all of the traces you will be able to see at one dashboard. You don't need to write some extra code for that. Gopher supports Zipkin, Jaeger. Even Gopher has an open source Gopher tracer, which is available for everyone as a public API. You can just set it up and your traces will be available throughout. So this is a sample API's tracing where you can see all the traces, how much time it took, and all of this, you don't need to write any code for that because Gopher is already doing that. And logs. Gopher supports different log levels. So suppose if your application is running in production, you don't need to see all the logs which are present. So you can run it in debug or fatal or error mode. So you only see when an error comes. But when you're debugging in your local system, you want to see what is happening, what you are doing wrong, or anything. You can change the log level to debug. And even though if your application is running on error mode on production devices, you can remotely change the log level without restarting your application. It will happen automatically if you set it up. And you can, all the logs are, when you see it in the terminal in your local system, they come in a predefined format, which is easy to read, easy to understand. But when you export it to AWS CloudWatch or any other exporter, you can see the well-defined JSON formats. So it is easy to search as well as. Moreover, there is a correlation ID attached with all the requests. So the same correlation ID is required to see the traces as well as logs. So your complete application has one ID through which you can monitor everything. Moreover, we comply with the default standards which are being used by Microsoft, MDN guides, etc. So we told you we don't need to return any status code, you don't need to do it. But how do we do it? When you return any error, you return a Gopher error, and we make sure that the errors which you are returning are properly well formatted. Even the status code gets already automatically set, and even the errors are well defined and descriptive. If you want to add any data, you can also add there. So when we talk about microservices, one of the crucial things is how you connect to different microservices. So when suppose a service is down, you don't want to hit it. So for that, we support a lot of different things, one of which is circuit breaker. It automatically gets kicked in if you configure it, and it will not send the request so that your complete service doesn't get down. For all of these things, you don't need to provide some extra additional code. It is very simple to set up. Moreover, if you want to retry on a request, that is also provided. You just need to set how many times you want to retry, and it will automatically work. Even all the services have health checks enabled. You can directly have your own endpoint as well if you want to set a different health check endpoint. If it's a Gopher application, it has a default endpoint which is already known by the upper services. So as I told, we support a lot of tons of databases. So in SQL, we support MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, and in NoSQL, we also support MongoDB, Cassandra, Redis, dgraph, ClickHouse, BadgerDB. And we also support different pub subsystems, MQTT, Kafka. And all of these different systems already comes in with the observability enabled. So you don't need to worry about how you want to set the metrics. You will be able to see it on the Grafana dashboard, how many messages you consumed, how many queries ran, how much time it took. Even we support file systems. You can connect to FTP, SFTP servers, and all of that. And if you want to even switch to one FTP to SFTP, you just need to change the configuration, and the complete code remains same. So I told about health checks. So in Gopher, all the databases which are supported, they are by default. When you're using Gopher, you don't need to set up any health check separately, because all the databases which we support, even the complete application, it checks for the health check. It checks automatically at every some point of time. So we make sure the complete application ecosystem is healthy. Moreover, all the outbound services which are connected, the downstream as the upstream services, they know that if the downstream service is up, then only they will send the request. And even the databases we support. Moreover, if you want to have a custom health check endpoint, you can have so. And these health check endpoints, we support Alive and Health endpoint, which are also used for Kubernetes liveness and readiness probe. So you don't need to have your system different setup for that, because Gopher by default provides you all of those endpoints. So talking about authentication. So any application which we use requires some kind of authentication. Gopher supports different ways of authentication, even when you are connecting with a microservice which is below it, or when a user is hitting that microservice. So we support API key authentication, OAuth, basic auth. Even if you don't want to configure it, you can use it without any authentication. So it's up to you, but we support everything, whatever is needed for a microservice. So enough of talking, let's see Gopher in action. So I would just like to show a small example of two microservices, service A and service B. So when you write your code using Gopher, right? Okay, so when you see Gopher, you just need to write a simple gopher.new, and you just need to run the application. In between that, you will register your additional HTTP services, and you can configure circuit breaker and other features. For registering the endpoints, you just need to do app.get. You need to give the pattern and the handler. And the handler will have the complete business logic which you want to put. So I will show you just a small example. So this is the only code which I have written. These are different handlers which I have registered. And I will just send a small request on the trace endpoint. And we got the X correlation ID. This correlation ID will be unique across. So if I just copy it, okay, and put it on the Gopher tracer here, and search for the same, I will be able to see the complete trace of the request. And I have not written a single line of code for that. Yeah. So, moreover, I talked about metrics which we so these are the different metrics which we are exporting, and we have not written any external code for that. Okay. And coming to that, we are visualizing all of those metrics on our Grafana dashboard. Even for the database, we have for the outbound calls, whatever it made, and the database, how much time it is taking, and all of that. This is a sample data which I created just now. Coming to one of the other features of Gopher. So there is a lot of time when we want to give a POC, and for that we write a lot of code. And for that, one of the reasons, and to faster the development process, we created a feature which just allows you to have the complete CRUD API by just providing the struct. You provide the struct, you register it, and you provide the migration. You provide your migrations. So whatever database schema you wanted to have, you create a diff migration schema. It will run before the app starts, and you just run this server. So when you do this, the complete endpoints are created, the complete create, delete, read, and update endpoints. And if I send the request, it is working fine. Moreover, it has auto validations as well. So if I send the same request with the same ID, it failed, saying there is an error. And even if I want to get the data, I didn't implemented any separate endpoint for this. But when I want to get the data, I hit the get endpoint and get the complete data here. So this is one of the features where you can just have the complete CRUD API with less than 50 lines of code. So this is one of the other features which we have, and a lot of features are present. You can visit our website, gopher.dev, for the same. Okay. And you can start our repo on GitHub. We are open for questions now. Yeah.